I'm Bill Farmer. I'm an agricultural economist and I've been here in Uganda for 9 years. I first came here to help with the reform of the forest sector. And in that process, I discovered there was a thing called carbon finance, which I had never heard of before. It was alive and well on Mount Elgon and Kibale Forest, where the Uganda Wildlife Authority was getting funding for tree planting from the Dutch Electricity Generating Board. This seemed to be an amazing thing, to plant indigenous trees with somebody else paying for them from a polluter in Europe. And this is one of the first schemes like this in the world. Eventually we chose Bushenyi as the site. We worked with EcoTrust and we worked with CARE. And we found a really sparky group of farmers who had got spare land and were clearly hungry for dollars. So working with them, EcoTrust took the project through, and the first payments were made about 4 years ago. And the first purchaser of those carbon credits was Tetra Pak UK. And about 2.5 years ago, I took an international group up on site. We were staying at Moya Lodge. They went on site and they met the people getting those carbon credits. And one lady in particular, Beatrice Asimbwe, stood out. She stood in front of the gathering, told us about the carbon credits, told us that she had bought a 3-piece suite with the first payment, that she had then bought a sideboard with the second payment, and every time she took a glass from the sideboard, she thought of her trees. She was so powerful that Michael Jenkins from Forest Trends there and then decided to take her to Montreal and be the voice of Africa for carbon credits. And she is now an international carbon consultant and goes to South Africa and speaks on behalf of the Bushenyi farmers. So carbon credits have started to sensitize people in Uganda that doing various things can earn you money if it is sustainable development and it has an impact on emissions in the atmosphere. So from those humble beginnings now, we've set up the Uganda Carbon Bureau. We're briefing people throughout Uganda about carbon finance, not just from trees, but from hydropower, from biogas, from the use of agricultural residues. And there is an enormous interest. Anybody growing trees now wants to know how they can cash in on the carbon element of this. It's quite a jargon-filled exercise. So part of my work at the moment is going around talking to groups and trying to put into plain English what this means and how it's accessible. So going last year to the Nairobi Climate Change Conference really gave me the extra motivation to pursue this. Because the world is looking for situations like Uganda. Uganda has carbon finance, but with community benefits and biodiversity benefits. So some of the folk that we're working with have chimpanzees in their trees. The carbon market likes that. So having pioneered smallholder tree planting carbon credits, we're now working with our first pioneer for avoided deforestation credits. These are credits for keeping your trees intact. Keep your forests intact. You can earn enough money to pay for their protection and a bit extra. You will then start attracting ecotourists. So an area that's riddled with poverty can suddenly be transformed by joining the carbon club, in effect. This time avoided deforestation before planting new trees. And what we're finding now is that some of the pioneering forestry plantation owners in Uganda, through the sawlog production scheme that the EU is funding, these folk are planting fresh trees, eucalyptus and pines in some of their areas, but they also have indigenous trees in the valley bottoms and on the hilltops. And in those areas reside the colobus monkeys and all the other wonderful riches of Uganda. Now they hope to get carbon credits from their plantations and they hope to get carbon credits from their indigenous forest. 50% of Uganda's forest disappeared in the last 100 years. If that can be turned back, Uganda's carbon footprint as a nation could be reduced. And personally, I see no reason why Uganda could not be the #1 country in Africa to declare itself to be carbon neutral. 70 to 80% of Uganda's carbon footprint comes from converting forests into farmland. If we're now planting trees back on that farmland, reversing that trend, Uganda could stand out in Africa and be a model not just for Africa but for the Commonwealth, because all eyes are on us in Chogum shortly. And Uganda stands out as one of the most interesting countries in Africa and the Commonwealth for accessing carbon credits that others can pick up some lessons. So that's why at the moment we've been briefing members of Parliament, we've been hopefully briefing Cabinet shortly, publicising what's going on with flyers and videos and all the interesting media that people want. And if Chogum can really latch onto this and people go back to their home countries and then go to the international meetings as a Commonwealth lobby group, we will really see our work multiplied. But meanwhile, the thing that motivates us is getting incomes into the rural areas with people like Beatrice. This is the future for Uganda's forestry sector.